Yeah. What's going on, winners? Hey, this is Coach JC, and I want to welcome you to another episode of the Win All Day podcast show. I am super excited right now for our guest today. And before we bring him on, you know what time it is. If you are a frequent listener, it is time for our Win All Day winning confession. We believe at Win All Day that you cannot live a winning life if you're speaking words of defeat. So there are power in your words. Hey, if you're a first-time listener or you're watching us, then all you need to do is repeat after me. Here we go. Today is my day. Nothing will get in my way of me being the best version of me. I am here on purpose. I have a purpose. I am strong. I am passionate. I am fearless. I choose faith. I was born a winner. I will win and win all day. Yes, you were born a winner. And after listening to this episode today, you're going to be winning more after today. And I'm bringing him on the screen right now, my special guest. I am super excited and stoked. And I want to welcome the one and only Bryan Ward, the host, the creator, the founder of the DADUP movement. Bryan, how are you, my friend? Welcome to Win All Day, brother.
Doing well, Coach. How are you, brother?
I'm living the dream.
Dude, I have been so excited for this episode. I'll tell you what, I've done a lot of things just in the brand that I've created. You know, I've been, on radio and magazines, all that kind of stuff. And I've been featured on CNN, and I am more excited about this interview than I was all those combined. So let's do this, man. I'm excited.
Let's go, man. I'm super stoked, man. I'm so excited that we crossed paths. I believe we even crossed paths through social media. Yep. And I was actually honored and blessed to ask to be a guest on your show not too long ago. And you have an amazing show, DADUP. We're going to get into that. Obviously, people that know my story know that me being a dad and fighting to be a dad was a very big part of my life and a big part of my story. And so I was just blessed and honored to be on your show. And I feel like our audience, we have a lot of men here. We do have a lot of women. We have a lot of entrepreneurs, a lot of people in the faith-based world. But I know for a fact that today's show and what you're going to speak into their life when it comes to DADUP and fatherhood, that it's going to be absolutely life-changing. And so here's what I always like to do, Bryan. There's going to be listeners that may not know who you are. And so I like to give you an opportunity right now just to share from your heart and tell everybody, how'd you get to where you are today? Just give somebody a little background on your story and how we ended up here today. That would be awesome, man.
Yeah, absolutely. It's something that it's a story that I love to talk about. It's changed who I am today from where I was. I grew up, my parents going to be married 50 years this June. So I grew up in a solid home, but the way I grew up, my parents they had to work a lot, and they weren't really involved in my life as a child. They raised me, they loved me, they provided what I needed. But all the things that I did as a child going up through high school, they just weren't around because they had to work. And that really impacted me as a child. It really did. I felt it because I knew that, I played a lot of sports in high school, and I looking up in the stands and not being able to see my own family there supporting me impacted me. And because of that, I think it's who it drove me to be as a father. I have two boys now, and I've been through this father journey for quite a while. My sons are 23 and 20, and growing as they grew up, I knew that my role for them was to be a support system and be a cheerleader for them. And so because of the way that I grew up, I knew I wasn't going to impact my boys that same way. I wanted to make a change. And so I knew I was going to be all in as a dad to them. And I was at every single event that they had, school function, parent teacher conferences, sporting events. I coached every single one of their teams all the way up through high school. And because I wanted to be that all in dad to them, I wanted to show them that I'm here to support them and to be their biggest cheerleader. And fast forwarding now that they're older, when my younger son was a senior in high school, my older son at the time was in college. And when my younger son was a senior in high school, I felt like as soon as he graduates high school, he was going to be going off to college. I felt like, and I know this is the wrong feeling to have, but I had this hurt in my heart that I felt like my fatherhood journey had ended. It was over. My wife and I had raised these two young men to be independent. And so what's next for me? Now, as dads, we know our journey as a dad doesn't end. It carries on even when our kids are adults. But for me, I felt like, hey, I had done everything I was supposed to do as a dad for my boys. And now that they're independent, I felt like there was going to be something missing. And I was talking to a family member of mine, and he said, you know what? He goes, you should talk to other dads. And I said, what do you mean? And he goes, you should do a podcast. And now listen, JC, I had no idea what I listened to some podcasts, but I had no idea how to even start a podcast. And he goes, no, you should get guys on that are successful in what they do, but also successful fathers, and just have them share their journey. And hopefully that inspires other dads that may be struggling in areas. So I did. I jumped all in. I talked to my wife about it. She's like, that would be great. You should do it. And I mean, here we are 2.5 years later, I'm 130 episodes in, and it's been amazing. It has been uplifting. It's helped me in ways that I never imagined it would help me. Not only helping other dads, but it's helped me like realize some of the things that I did wrong as a dad that I could have done better. But the fact that doing these episodes, if I could just change, even if it's just one person's life, then I felt like I've made a difference. And God was calling me in this direction. And I don't quite understand why yet, but I know that there's a reason behind it. And I'm going to continue to follow that plan that God has for me. Wherever this DADUP brand or journey takes me, I'm going to continue to drive and go that direction, because that's where I'm being called to do right now. And I just felt like that, helping dads out there to be better dads for their families. Listen, as dads, we have this stigma of just kind of being considered the babysitter. We're there just kind of take care of the kids when mom's not around. And I don't like that stigma that dads have. They feel they have this heavy weight on their shoulder that they have to be the financial provider for their family. And they got to work these 60, 80-hour weeks to provide for the family. Yet they're missing out on all these opportunities with their kids to really connect and bond with them and build a relationship with them that they need to build. And I wanted to show dads, by interviewing guys like you, show dads that, hey, you can be this successful guy you want to be and provide for the family the way you need to be, but you can also be a successful father too. It is possible. You just have to want it. You have to find a way to do it. So that's what I've done. And it's been an amazing journey, JC. It really has. It's been a blessing.
Man, I love it, Bryan. Thank you so much for sharing that with us. And so let's talk about this for a second, because in what we do in the Win All Day, we have 3 different divisions. And one of the divisions is personal development. And it's based around 5 pillars. And one of the pillars is family. And so our goal is, how do we stack wins and not be one-dimensional as a man? And so it's changed the lives of men all over. And I'm humbled to do it. But here's why I say this is, we talk about the mindset. We talk about emotions. We talk about fitness. We talk about health. We talk about finances. We talk about business, right? But the one area that I've honestly seen guys struggling the most and affect other areas of their life is the family life, right? And I think so many times I'm seeing guys stack wins in their business. I'm seeing guys win in their body, but there's a disconnect and they feel like they're losing in life because something in their house is not in order. And so I want to talk about that for a second, because I think we know the stats already, and maybe you're listening, you don't know the stats, right? That there's a lot of households that dads are not present in. And that's reality of the world we live in. But there's a lot of households where dads live there and they're present, but dads feel disconnected because they were never given a playbook, Bryan, right? They don't know what to do. And so many times as dads, we retreat, we pull back, we're led by feelings, we're led by emotions. We don't want to be rejected by our kids. We're not sure what the balance is between friend and what parenting. And so I want you to talk a little to the dad, first of all, that says, man, you know what? I'm listening to this. And, I haven't showed up as a dad. I really, because I've never been given a playbook. And I am living with some guilt. I am living with some shame. And I said my life would never look like this from a dad's perspective. Where do I start, Bryan? Where do I start just to change what's going on right now? I want to be more involved. I want to be more present. I want to have a loving connection with my kids. Where do I start? I'm disconnected right now. What would you say to that dad, Bryan?
Yeah, I feel for dads like that, because I do run into it a lot with dads that in my own life, in my own circle of friends that have had kids that kind of feel this disconnection. And the one thing that I would tell them is, first of all, you got to start with loving yourself. because if you're not loving yourself, there's no way you're going to be able to provide love to your family. And second thing is you need to find a system, you're going to put a system in place that really helps you with scheduling. I think scheduling is huge for dads. Listen, we schedule time for, our doctor's appointments. We schedule time at the gym. We schedule meetings for our business. But the one thing that dads miss is scheduling time for our family. And that has to go on your schedule, and that has to be a priority. You have to make your family a priority. And I think first, it starts with love. Second, it starts with scheduling. And third, sit down with your kids, sit down with them and say, what can I do better as a father to you? And listen, just shut up and listen. Let them speak to you, because believe it or not, kids are going to be truthful when it comes to that. They're going to break it down for you. And it may be something you don't want to hear, but I think it's important that we sit down with our kids and go, listen, I have not been as connected with you as I would like to be. And I want to build that relationship up. What can I do different? What would you like me to do different? And I'll promise you that I'll do everything in my power to work on that, to make our relationship better. So I think those three areas of loving yourself, building that schedule of making your family a priority, and sitting down with your kids and saying, what can I do better as a dad that you would like to see from me that I can work on?
I love it, man. Those are three powerful, powerful tools, guys. If you're listening right now and you're even not a dad out there, but you're a parent, right? I think of it, even if you want to win in any area in relationships, right? In a career, your employees, coworkers, if you don't, how you view you so many times directly affects how you show up, right? We all have self-esteem. Self-esteem is how I view me in a situation, right? And that's directly going to affect the self-image. Self-image is how I believe the world views me, right? So if I continue to beat myself up and talk about the failures and what I didn't do as a dad, right, or in any relationship, then I'm going to show up more reserved, hesitant, not expecting to win, right? So talk to me about maybe some of the things that you've done over the years to say, you know what, it's self-care, right? I've got to take care of Bryan mentally, physically, emotionally, spiritually. I've got to take care of me. So when I love myself, then I can give love to my kids. What's some of the practical, tangible things that Bryan has done over the years to love himself so that he could be the loving dad that he is?
Well, first of all, it starts with prayer. Every morning I say a little prayer to myself. It's nothing spectacular. It's not long. It's just something real quick that I just say to myself, to the Lord, just saying, hey, give me strength, give me courage, give me wisdom throughout the day to help me be a better version of myself each day. And I say that to myself every single day. The second thing is I journal, and it's something that it may be a struggle for dads. Dads say, I don't want to be doing any diary or anything like that. No, I'm not talking about doing a diary. I'm just talking about journaling down your thoughts. It's something that I do every morning. It's just a sentence or two, just kind of helps me clear my mind. What's like, you wake up in the morning, the first thing you do is you start thinking about, oh, what do I got to do? What I got to do? What I got this, and they're just kind of going in circles in their mind, right? I jot that stuff down. I get it out of my head. I get it off my head so I don't have to freaking worry about it. And now it's written down. I've got it off my mind. Now I can really get my mind focused. So that's something that I did. The other thing that I was real intent with my boys in particular is that I always had conversations with them. It wasn't open-ended questions. I always talked to them about how their day was. Those are things that I was real intent about. I wanted to know what they did for that day. I wanted to know who they were hanging out with. I wanted to know what the kind of activities that they participated in. I was very involved in that area. And I think that's what helped to build our bond today. The other thing that I always did is I always made sure that I had connection with my wife, with my spouse, because she's my partner, right? Yeah. We're in this together as parents. We're in this together. So I always made sure I had really solid, open communication and conversations with my wife. Those are areas for me that I worked on. As far as fitness and all that, I mean, listen, I was in the Marines, so I know a little bit something about fitness, but for me, I like to go for runs. I'm a big runner. So if I'm tired or stressed out or just kind of feeling that little bit of anxiety, listen, we all get it. We're all going to go through it, but we have the worry, the stress, anxiety, or whatever through the day. We're just burnt out. I'll go for a run. Sometimes I come home from work and my wife's like, hey, you're not kind of checked in right now. You seem a little uptight. You seem a little stressed, or maybe you're kind of drained from the day. Maybe you should go for a run. And I'll go for a run, and it just kind of re-energizes. People think, oh, I'm running, but I'm tiring myself out. No, it re-energizes me. It gets me refocused. So those are just some of the areas that I've done over the years. What I've done recently though, JC, that's something I wish I would have started a long time ago. And it's something I talk a lot about on my show because I think it's super important. But for me, I look at companies. When you have a company, you typically have a board of directors that really run that company. They make the solid decisions to help that company stay afloat. And one of the things that I've done over the last going on 2 years now, something I started when I first started the podcast, but as I realized that for my own life, I'm running my life. I have to make sure that I'm doing everything in my power in every area of my life to make sure it's going strong. So why not have a personal board of directors, a group of guys that really report to me, give me input, give me guidance throughout my day or my life. And I meet with these guys every other month, and I vetted them. I went through all these guys. I said, this is what my plan is. Are you on board? They said, yes. Here's what I did though. I made up a contract, JC. I made up a contract that said, here's what you're going to do for me. And as being a board member, here's what you're going to do for me. And here's what I'm going to do for you. And they had to sign that contract. They had to agree to it. And I signed it. And no one on my boards in my family, because I think family you don't want anybody, if you're going to do a personal board of directors, you don't want anybody in your family on your board, because they're going to tell you what you want to hear instead of what you need to hear. Huge. These group of guys are guys that tell me what I need to hear. And sometimes the conversations that we have are hard, and sometimes most of the times they're fun. I mean, we have a good time talking and sharing things. But the crazy thing is, this board of directors was supposed to be about me. It's supposed to be about helping me. But the funny thing is, we're all helping each other. We're all there for each other and supporting each other in the things that we're doing. So it's been a really cool thing that I've done. And then like I said, we meet every other month via Zoom, and we talk for about an hour, and I go down, I have an agenda that I go through. I mean, it's a whole process. I got an agenda that I go through, and we touch on all these areas, and they give me their solid input, their solid advice. So I think that for dads, if you don't have to have a board of directors like I have. I call them I have the DADUP podcast. I call them my man up tribe. That's what I call them. So it's my man up board of directors. But you don't have to have a board of directors, but just have some mentors in place. Somebody that's outside of your family that you really rely on, trust, can go to when you're really feeling something that you need to get off your chest. Somebody that you can really trust, like JC, somebody that you could really trust and go to, and he'll give you his honest opinion and hear you out. So you just have some mentors around you that you can really lean on. It could be a pastor at church, it could be somebody like that. So yeah, personal board of directors is what I've done recently. And I wish I would have started it sooner, but you know what? It's been huge for me. Wow.
Guys, if you're just tuning in to the Win All Day podcast, this episode, I'm talking with the creator, the founder of DADUP and the DADUP podcast show. This is Bryan Ward. Rewind right now and pause after, like, this one strategy could radically change your life. And it's not, forget fatherhood, forget being a dad in your life. How many times in life, Bryan, do we see guys trying to do life alone? Right. And so back in the day, there's a book I read, right? It's Think and Grow Rich by Napoleon Hill. And it talked about masterminds. And that was the first time I was exposed to masterminds and what a mastermind is. And so many times we do life on our own as a dad and a father. And we can't raise our hand and say, I need help. So what Bryan just encouraged you to do is say, what if you put people in place, just like businesses do, that are an advisory board, a board of directors that you do life with? People, iron sharpens iron. That's what the Bible says, right? We know that works, but it's people in your life that aren't always going to tell you what you want to hear, but what you need to hear, that you could bounce ideas off of, right? And maybe be a little vulnerable with. And maybe they have ideas that help make you a better father. Maybe you have ideas that make them a better father. And maybe as dads together, collectively, you hold each other accountable to incorporate the systems, like Bryan said, loving yourself, setting aside quality time, right? Conversational time with your kids. Bryan, I absolutely love that idea. And we have a brotherhood, again, and Win All Day, where we do that, right? And not advisory board or board of directors, but where we get together in small groups. And iron sharpens iron. Guys, you could do this if you're a mom listening. You could do this if you're a dad listening. You could do it for your business. You could do it for your life in general. You could do it for a specific area like Bryan did, starting it up with just dads. And now there's so much accountability there. I absolutely love that takeaway, Bryan. Thanks for sharing that. Let me ask you this, man. So let's talk about what has been the hardest part, right, for you being a dad that you've had to overcome, right? So the hardest part of being a dad that you've had to overcome that you'd say most dads deal with this, right? What has that been for you, Bryan, and how did you overcome that?
Yeah, that's a great question because for me, there was something that I dealt with, and it's not something that I talk about a lot, to be honest. But it's something that I now say that I'm proud of. But for me, and maybe there's a ton of dads out there that struggle in this area, but this may not be for everybody. For me, there was a point in my life. I grew up in an alcoholic family. My parents were both alcoholics, and being in the Marines, you know, I like to say they teach you how to fight, they teach you how to cuss, they teach you how to drink. Those are the three things that the Marines taught me. So I was a big drinker, and I drank. And for me, I had, my wife and I had two boys, and I still continued to drink. And I found myself, it's interesting. I'm going to try not to get emotional here, but I found myself at a point in my life where my older son, I think he was around 12, something like that, 12 years old. I found myself sitting in my chair one day, and I was having a beer, and I finished the beer, and I told my son, hey, can you go grab me another beer out of the fridge? And he did. He went and got it for me. And I don't know what it was. I don't know if it was my Heavenly Father talking to me or what, but something clicked in me that said, what in the hell are you doing? What did you just do? You asked your son to get you a beer. And it hit me, that it impacted me to a point where I realized this is wrong. I'm teaching my kids that, listen, alcohol isn't bad as long as you use it the way that it's supposed to be used. You enjoy a beverage or two here and there, but you're abusing it. That's when it becomes bad. And I found myself abusing it. Now, listen, I wasn't a drunk. I wasn't, those kind of, I still had a very successful career. I was still a very successful coach. I wasn't drinking when I was out coaching, that kind of stuff. But when I was home and relaxed, that's when I really laid it on. And I realized I've got to make a change for my family. I grew up in an alcoholic family. I don't want my boys growing up in an alcoholic family. And that moment just clicked for me. And that day I just stopped. I said, enough's enough. And, here we are going on almost, I'm 12 and a half years later. I haven't had a single drop of alcohol. I just made that decision to stop. Now that's a mindset shift. Some people struggle with that. Some people may need help with that. If you have, this isn't a show about alcoholism, but if you have a problem with alcohol or any type of drug or any type of addiction, and you can't stop on your own, you can't make that shift, that mindset shift, seek out others. Like I was talking about earlier, mentors that really help you get there. For me, it was just like, once I put my mind to something, it's over with. I'm going to accomplish it. And so it was just a mental shift that I just made and stopped and haven't looked back. But if you're struggling in that area, you can feel free to reach out to me and I'll help you through it. But feel free to reach out to any mentor that may help you through it to get you through it. But for me, it was just a shift. So that was the biggest struggle that I faced in my life as a dad. And I'll tell you, to this day, JC, my kids still thank me to this day for stopping because of the impact that it was going to have on their lives. So that was a big challenge for me. The other area that I really struggled.
Let's pause there.
Go ahead.
Let's pause there for a second, guys. I think that's super, super powerful. And first of all, thank you for your service in the Marines and the military. We honor you, man. Grateful for you.
Thank you.
And so tell us this, like, for you, laying aside the alcohol, why was that such a big thing for you, right? And how to improve you being a dad, right? For some people, it might not be the alcohol, but I think we all have distractions. We all have vices. We all have things that we turn to, right? Coping mechanisms. I grew up, my parents got divorced when I was 8 years old. My dad, or separated when I was 8 years old, divorced when I was 10. Up until that point, my dad was a raging alcoholic and drug addict. And so I saw the worst of what alcohol can do. And so I always said a few things. I'll never be an alcoholic, right? I'll never get divorced, and I'll never not be in my kid's life. And so I got divorced at 20 years old. I wasn't in my kid's life, not by my will, but thank God I never became an alcoholic because I saw what it did to wreck my family. And so my dad now is clean 37 years, and he's one of the top drug and alcohol counselors in the state of New Jersey. And I can get emotional as well because I've had these conversations with my dad on the moments he missed out on because of alcohol, the things he did because of alcohol, the things he missed because of alcohol. And so it might not be alcohol for everybody. It might be TV. It might be work. It might be, a vice, porn. There's all these things that guys use to decompress, to relax, to say, I had a hard day at work. I need to figure out a way to run from a situation. Or maybe I don't know how to connect with my kids. So I go to these vices to try to bring significance and purpose to me because I don't feel significance and purpose in this area. So I wanted to pause there, Bryan, because I think as dads, we all have those things. Mm-hmm. Sometimes there's a hard conversation we have to have with our kids. We're scared of rejection. We're not sure how they're going to respond. So what do? We hide in doing certain things. Why was it alcohol for you? And when you hung that up, how did that improve you as a dad?
Yeah, I think for me, it was a Band-Aid to fix me. It was one of those things that I guess it was maybe I didn't love myself enough. I didn't really love who I was as a person, not so much as who I was as a dad. I still felt that I was a great dad, but I just didn't love myself as a person. And I think that for me, the alcohol was just kind of a Band-Aid to kind of help take me away from all the stresses that I was feeling. When I stopped, though, it really opened up my eyes to my family more. It really opened up my eyes to who I was as an individual. It really helped me focus on things that were important to me, more important to me than alcohol. And it was a tough thing to go through in the beginning, because it's hard when I'm at a family function or I'm at, some event and people are standing around having a cocktail and not feeling the urge to want to have a cocktail with them. But I had to learn that my life as a dad and as a husband and as a human being was so important. And I think when I was drinking a lot, that I didn't feel that way. I felt like I said, it was like a Band-Aid to cover up things that I was really feeling. And I think taking it away really opened up, allowed me to become more of who I'm supposed to be. And maybe it was a sign from the Lord to say, hey, you know what, man, this isn't leading you in the right direction. And this isn't who I've created you to be. And you need to go a different direction. And ultimately, listen, man, I wanted to change my family direction. I wanted to change that family history of alcoholism. And it's the same thing with fatherhood. It's the reason why I was such an all-in dad, because I grew up in a household that I had a dad that was around, a dad that said he loved me all the time, but because he worked, he couldn't always be there. And so I wanted to change that direction, the trajectory that my family was headed in, my family history was headed in. And so that's why I opted to be that all-in dad. And that's why I stopped drinking. I didn't want to go that direction that I was raised in. So,
man, so powerful, Bryan. And obviously you got the time that you waste, right? We're using alcohol for a second, just going home, watching TV, having a beer. All of a sudden, you probably multiplied your time spending with your kids when otherwise you would have been laying around having a beer. And so, guys, I want to challenge everybody listening or watching right now. I don't even want to move on with this show right now, because I know for a fact that there's people listening and watching right now that this one takeaway could change the entire trajectory of your life, not just as a dad. And it's this: we all get comfortable, right, in situations, and we all have those coping mechanisms. And sometimes it's a phone, sometimes it's alcohol, sometimes it's, TV, sometimes there's all these things we use, right? And so for me, I tell the guys I work with this: if you have something that you cannot be without for 48 hours, it 100% controls you. I don't care if it's a job. I don't care if it's a person. I don't care if it's a phone, alcohol, TV. There's stuff that if you took 48 hours and you had to remove that one thing, there's people that can't even function without their phone, without TV, without alcohol, without people. And so anything that controls you can become a bad thing. And so I commend you for what you did, Bryan, in laying down the alcohol, because you knew it could have got to a point where it controlled you. And if you're listening right now, I want to challenge you, me and Bryan, to let you know that your past does not define your present or future. And so the mistakes you made, the guilt you might live with, the shame you might live with, the situation you might be in right now, the vices that might have control of you right now, the things that might be controlling you, that are stealing from you being the man that you were called to be, being the dad that you were called to be. I want Bryan's story to motivate you right now, to inspire you right now, that God's no respecter of men. If you did it for Bryan, you can do it, that you're strong enough mentally, you're strong enough physically. Stop talking yourself out of being a great dad. Stop talking yourself out of being a great husband. Stop talking yourself out of breaking the addiction. And right now, I call it done. And I believe, just like Bryan did, that you could do it in making one decision today that could radically change your life, to get uncomfortable and say, I'm no longer going to be controlled by this thing in my life. We all have them as men. And right now is your time to man up. Like Bryan said earlier, look yourself in the mirror and become the man that God called you to be, so you could be the dad you were called to be. So I just wanted to pause there, Bryan, and say that, because I know there's guys that are listening that need to hear that, man. So is there anything else you want to add to that part, Bryan?
No, I was just going to say kind of something that you were going there with, that it's hard, right? It's hard. I understand it. Dads, moms, whoever's watching this, listening to this, I understand it's hard. You got that one thing that you rely on, that you need. I get it. It's hard, but you got to learn to, it's all about the mindset. It's all about that mental shift. You have to learn to take that mental shift and just turn that switch, because it will change your life. It really will. It will put you in a whole new direction. And I promise you, your life will open up so much more, so many more opportunities to come your way if you just make that mental shift. So again, I'm going to say it again. If anybody is struggling with anything out there, it doesn't matter what it is. If you're struggling with something, you can lean on me. You can reach out to me. I'll help you through it. I'll provide the guidance. I'll provide the support. I'll provide the accountability that you need. But I throw that out there, JC. I hope you don't mind. I throw that out there because I want people to be better in their own lives. And I want people to be better husbands, better wives, better parents, better in their jobs, better in their fitness. And breaking these habits, these things that aren't good for us, is the start. And so feel free to reach out to me anytime.
Love it. Love it. There's a great book, I don't know if you read it, called Atomic Habits. Phenomenal book, but it talks about how we create habits and how we create addictions. And if you guys, if you feel like you don't have the right habits in your life, that's a great read. I don't want to get into it too much on this call, but I think, Bryan, too, there's a couple of things I want to stick to really quick that you said. If you're right now listening and you feel like you're not at a place in life where you want to be, not just a dad, I think there's two things that Bryan said that I took away from that is, you've got to have clarity, okay, on around two things. Number one, what you want, a vision, and number two, a purpose. I heard Bryan say it's a mindset shift, right? But before that, to break the habits and the behaviors that were holding him back, let's just use the alcohol, okay? He knew exactly what he wanted and what he didn't want. You said it. I want to change the trajectory of my family history. I don't want to be alcoholic. I want to be a better dad, right? And there was a strong reason. There was strong purpose, right? If you're listening right now and you don't have, you're not where you want in life, you feel like you're not winning as a dad, I want to challenge you right now. Create a vision. What does a vision look like for you right now? What does a winning relationship look like for you as a dad with your kids? And why do you want that? Create strong enough reasons, a purpose behind that to say, this is why I have to make this a must. And that's why Bryan was able to cut that off and say, I'm done with this, because I know what I want. I know what kind of relationship I want as a dad. And I also know why I'm doing this. So if you're listening right now and you're kind of like, where do I go? What do I do? Bryan's giving you a lot of great stuff, but pause this right now and create a vision, a clear vision of what you want. Write the vision and make it plain. So then you know, hey, what do I need to do in a system or strategy to be a better dad? What do I need to do in conversation and text messaging and sitting down with my kids, right? Without direction, you have no clarity. And so write the vision, make it plain so you can run with it. What does a winning as a dad look like for you? And then create strong enough reasons of why you must have that relationship with your kids, just like Bryan did. Bryan, let's jump into the conversational side of it for a second, because I think this is so hard, especially for men, right? And I had a daughter, right? I was raised by a single mom. my mom, I grew up very emotional. My mom was like, share all your feelings, all your emotions, say everything. So me having a daughter was really good because I'm not like a hard-nosed, like, shut up and do it. I'm like, sit down, let's talk about it. That was really good, right? And so talk about how, and maybe it's strategy on how you incorporated to have intentional, because you mentioned this, being intentional with conversations. Did you schedule it like certain times of the week? Did you go on dates? Did you do like daddy son time? Like, how did you do that to make it a system where the conversations became organic and there was true conversation, where it didn't always feel like my dad just beating me up? It's man to man. We have a friendship. I know him. I like him. I love him. I trust him. What's the strategy, and how those conversations, how did you put those conversations in place?
Yeah, well, for me, it was a little bit easier in that, because I coached the teams that they played on. They had to ride to the practices and they had to ride to the games with me. So those conversations happened a lot in the car. We had those conversations before and after practice or before and after games. But aside from that, there were conversations that I had just sitting down with them, whether it was in their room or in the living room. And it was a lot of, just open-ended questions. I wanted to hear them out. I wanted to see what their day was like, those kind of things. But those conversations weren't always pleasant. But I wanted my kids to understand, and this is something that dads struggle with. I wanted my kids to understand that, and they always knew this since they were little boys, that it was okay to come talk to me when they were stressed or hurting or excited about something. I wanted them to know that, listen, my door is always open for you, regardless of what you've done or haven't done. I want you to know that my door is always open for you. You can trust me, and I'm going to be your biggest supporter. I'm your teammate. I'm your teammate in whatever it is you do. Now, listen, it doesn't mean I'm not going to be disappointed. Yep. You may do something that I'll be disappointed in, but that doesn't mean I love you any less. So I always had that level of trust with my kids. As parents, we're supposed to provide food, housing, a roof over their head, food, clothing, and safety, right? And I wanted my kids to know that when they came home, it was safe to come home. This was a safe space that they could come and talk to me or their mom. It was simple as that. So I wanted my kids to always know that, and they've always known that. And even to this day, my older son's 23 years old, and he's functioning fine on his own. He's got a great career, all that kind of, graduated from college, all that stuff. But if he's feeling something that he's unsure of, he'll still come and ask me advice. He'll still come and ask for my input, or he'll ask my wife for her input. And I think it's because of our relationship that we had, the conversations that we had that when they grew up.
Well, and so let's pause there, because I think that's a desire of many dads, right? And so it was a desire for me as a dad when my daughter came to live with me, and I was very strategic in that. And so I think to give some people some takeaways now, like for me, what I learned and for me, what worked is I almost had to make my daughter understand, right, that when she came to me, I wasn't going to condemn her first. Right? I wasn't going to discipline her first, even if it was something she did wrong, unless it was a dangerous situation. Right? And I think that's where most kids don't come home and share, right? Because they think, oh man, I'm going to get in trouble. Right? That's the first thing that can happen. Dad's going to be really disappointed and mad at me. I'm going to get whooped. Right? There's all that fear. Right? And so growing up as an Italian, in an Italian family, they would say, what's better, to be loved or to be feared? Right? And so how do you get both? Right? How do you get the love and the fear of as a parent? And so for me, I communicate that with my daughter, right? And I told her, I said, there's going to be situations where I'm not going to agree, like you said, with everything you did. I'm not going to condone your behavior, right? And there might be consequences, right? But I always opened the door to have conversation first. And I want you to talk about that, because I think that's hard for a lot of parents. How do I separate, or how do I balance the conversation where they know me and like me enough to share with me what's on their heart, where they'll come to me willingly without hiding stuff from me because I'm just going to reprimand them? What's some things that maybe you did, Bryan, to open up that conversation so that they felt comfortable enough to come to you and share stuff with you?
Talk less and listen more.
Huge.
Period.
Huge.
Talk less and listen. Listen, it's key, because our kids are opening up to us, and the quicker you jump in and interrupt them or try to correct them or reprimand them, the easier it is for them to put that wall up and close down. And it's going to cause them to look in the future and know that, shoot, I just messed up. I'm not talking to my dad about this because he's just going to come down on me. So I think for me, it was just a lot of listening more, talking less, hearing them out, letting them speak. And then, you know what, sharing with them your thoughts after they're done talking, obviously sharing with them your thoughts. And something that my wife and I work on now is that, and we've worked on this over the years, but one of the things that we do as a couple, you know, just kind of going as a couple, is we actually have a marriage coach. And she's a licensed therapist, but we have a marriage coach, not because we have problems, but so we don't have problems. So I think when it comes to our kids, knowing that, hey, you can come talk to me and I'm going to listen. So what I'm going to say to you, like, let's just give you an example. My son comes to me, says, Dad, I need to talk to you about something. Oh, great. Okay. What's going on? I want you to hear me out. Okay, cool. Do you want me to listen or do you want my input? And they'll say, no, just listen. I just need a vent. Okay, cool. Then I'll shut up and listen. Huge. And I shut up and I listen, eyeball to eyeball, and I shut up and listen. I don't have the phone in my hand. I'm not looking at my email going, okay, yeah, okay, I hear you. No, I'm intent. Now, if they want my advice, no, I want you to hear me, but I need your advice. Cool. I'll listen. And then when you're done talking, I'll give you my input. So for me, those were the ways that our conversations went. Now, listen, I'll say this. I'll say this. I'm talking like I'm this perfect dad. I'm not. I made a lot of mistakes as a dad. I messed up a lot. There were times where I wanted to fly off the handle and lose it. And sometimes it took my wife to say, hey, you need to check out.
Yep.
You need some space. You need to take a minute. I'll handle this. And she'll step in. And, you know, that's kind of that partnership that we have. So I messed up a lot as a dad. Some of the things that I've done as a father, just kind of losing it and flying off the handle, that I wish I wouldn't have, you know. I had an incident with my older son. We were a big baseball family. I coached they played baseball their whole lives. And we were at the ballpark every weekend. When my son was 10 years old, we got in the car and he said, because Dad, I need to tell you something. And I go, what's up? And he goes, I just want to let you know something, and I don't want you to get mad. And I go, okay, I'm not going to get mad. I mean, if you've done something, I may be disappointed, but I'm not going to get mad. What's up? And he said, I don't want to play baseball anymore.
Yeah.
And we're a huge baseball family. I mean, we were at the ballpark all the time. And I said, okay. And he goes, yeah, I'm just not feeling it. I don't like it. It's boring. I said, well, all right, that's cool. And he goes, well, you're not mad? And I go, no, I'm not mad. Why would I be mad? If you don't want to play baseball anymore, I don't want to make you play baseball. That's silly. I said, now our rule is in our house, other than school, you have to have an extracurricular activity. So you got to do something else. So you don't want to do baseball. You got to do something. Oh no, I just want to play basketball. That's what he said. He was playing basketball too. He goes, I just want to focus on basketball. I said, cool. Our other rule in our house was when you start something, you finish it. Yep. So if they were in the middle of the season, they didn't want to do that anymore. They still had to finish the season. So I said, okay, that's cool. You don't have to play baseball anymore, but we have to finish the season. And he goes, no, I know. I have to finish the season. That's good. So we did. We finished the season. He was 10 years old, finished the season, hasn't picked up a baseball bat since. And so, but the reason I bring that story up is because it showed me that even though he was 10 years old, he felt a safe space with me that he could come talk to me. And I attribute that to our conversations that we had from ages, 0 to 10, you know what I mean? We had all these conversations and I let them know that it's okay to come talk to me when you're feeling something on your heart. Or you know what I mean? So
love it.
Yeah.
I love it. Guys, you're listening to the Win All Day podcast show. This is Bryan Ward, creator and founder of DADUP movement and the DADUP podcast. And so, Bryan, I think you said a few things right there that I just want to reiterate. And number one, guys, is have a strategy, right? Have a strategy to conversate with your kids. And so I think for me, listening to you, and I'm thinking about some of the stuff I did like I have a daughter. So I would have a strategy to go on date night, once a month. Once a month we'd go on date night. But every week we had our strategic Starbucks date. I'd pick her up from school. okay, 30 minutes, one day of the week. I remember exactly when it would be on Wednesday. She'd go to her vocal lesson. She's a singer. And then we'd go to Starbucks, 30 minutes. Okay. It was individualized, intentional attention. And so that's strategic, intentional time, that date, and then the Starbucks. That doesn't mean we didn't have the organic conversations that we would have, like you mentioned. And so I think what you said is powerful. And I want to stay there for a second, because I remember when my daughter looked at me as a coach, she was sharing something with me, and I jumped in and I was like, here's what you need to do, fix it. Blah, blah, blah. And she goes, whoa, Dad, I don't want Coach JC right now. I don't need Coach JC. I just need Dad. And I was like, oh man. And I felt horrible, but I realized at that moment that I wasn't a great listener. And so I learned to shut up and listen, like you said. And once I started to do that, she came to me more often. Mm-hmm. And I realized it was the secret, because now she came, and then I would say, like you said, at the end, right? I'd say, hey, Olivia, do you want some input on that? And if she said no, I'd shut up and move on. You know what started happening? Because I shut up and listened, and I didn't play Coach JC, trying to fix everything and coach her and mentor her and just listen, she started to come to me and ask me more advice. It went from, hey, Dad, I have to share something with you. I just want you to listen, to, Dad, what would you do? And I almost organically became coach, the role that I wanted to, right? It was hard for me to shut up and listen. So I think the other thing too is having strategic time is very important. We live such in a busy world, right? Mm-hmm. Phones and business and this and that. To make quality time, I think for boys, what my dad did, even when my parents were divorced, he picked me up and we went and shot hoops. We played sports, baseball. Anytime you're active with boys, and if you have sons, it opens up conversation, right? It organically opens up conversation. And then my daughter, it was more like a date, right? It was taking her out, showing her how a man should treat her, getting dressed up, giving her a little piece of jewelry, a flower. But don't miss this. You said earlier, some of the most valuable times for a parent can come when you're in the car, right? When you were driving. So if you have young kids, own the moment, maximize that time, turn the radio off. Don't be on your phone. Like when I was taking my daughter to school, all them years, that was the greatest conversational time. We're locked in a car together. And it's like, we have 15 minutes there, 15 minutes when I pick her up. That's 30 minutes of intentional time that I could be intentional. How was your day? What big wins did you have today? Right? What'd you learn today? What do you want to talk about today? Sometimes it was turning on the music and jamming to Justin Bieber because she loved Justin Bieber, but that built rapport with Dad, right? She got to see Dad. And I think so many times kids just want to see the real genuine Dad. I want to see Dad high. I want to see Dad low. I want to see Dad emotional. I want to see Dad strong. And I think it's okay. Sometimes when we flip off, the kids see, wow, Bryan, that's my dad. You acted crazy today. JC, you acted crazy. But that's real life. And for them to see the real you, to say, my dad's not always this. My dad's not always this. My dad's normal. He has emotions. And then you could come to them and say later, hey, guess what? That's not how Dad probably should have reacted. I reacted rather than was proactive. Hey, I apologize. Will you forgive me? Accept my apology? Here's how
That's huge.
Here's why I reacted that way. And oh man. But having those intentional times, strategic times with your kids to have those conversations, I think, Bryan, is a game changer. What were you going to say? Huge.
I was going to say what you said there is huge, because it's something that dads struggle with too, is that, us dads, we have this, we carry this kind of this ego, we have this chip on our shoulder, and we forget sometimes that when we make mistakes, it's okay to apologize. And listen, if you're at your job, if you're at your business and you make a mistake, more than likely you're going to go to your supervisor and go, hey, I messed up. I'm sorry. That shouldn't have happened, blah, blah, blah. That should be in your family too. It should be with your spouse. It should be with your kids. If you've messed up, own it. And guess what? That opens up this level of trust that is huge. It's crazy how much it impacts the level of trust between you and your family, whether it's your spouse or your kids, to go to them and go, man, I messed up there, dude. Listen, man, I really messed up. I'm really sorry. Acknowledging that you messed up, apologizing for it. I'm really sorry. I hope you forgive me. And what would you like to see from me next time in a situation like that? Acknowledging that just builds huge rapport with your kids and your wife. Your wife loves it too, or your husband, they love it too. But your kids in particular, man, my kids hear me say I'm sorry to them. They know that I'm human. I make mistakes. Just because I'm a grown man, a grown adult, doesn't mean I don't make mistakes. I mess up. I messed up, dude. I'm really sorry, man. I hope you forgive me. And what can I do next time to make it better?
I love it. I love it. In marketing, right? In relationship building, right? There's the know, like, and trust factor, right? In marketing, they tell you when you're going after prospects, right? Or potential prospects that could be clients or customers, everybody wants to just go sell, right? And trust. They got to trust you before they buy from you. But if you really want it to work, right, you got to get them to know you first. You got to get them to like you, and then they'll trust you. And so think about that in parenting as well. How many times we want to jump to this and we want our kids to trust us and have this deep, loving relationship, and our kids don't even know us.
Right.
And I think for me, one of the things that I did with my daughter that I learned from her is my daughter really wanted to know me. Right. She wanted to know me. And then quality time, we got to like each other. And that like factor was like, I like my dad. I want to be around him. Man, he's good at this. He's great at this. He makes me better here. He likes me. Right. And so when they get to know you and they know, wait, my dad has emotions. My dad could apologize. My dad might cry. My dad might curse at times. He might not always be perfect. My dad loves Jesus. My dad loves basketball. When they get to know you at your core, your roots, that's when that relationship, I believe, moves to another level. I think so many parents are so disconnected from their kids. They live in a household, they coexist, and the kids say, I don't even know my parents. I don't even really know who they are. Some kids don't even know what their parents do for a living outside of the house.
Right.
So I love that. I think there's a lot of vulnerable conversations that could happen. And Bryan, tell us this, man. What would you say to the dad out there? We talked about so many great things. You got to love yourself first, because you can't give love until you love the person looking in the mirror. We talked about having a strategy, right? We talked about, having sit down strategic conversations with their kids. You challenge everybody on this amazing call and this podcast to, have an advisory board, have men in your life that are going to sharpen you and make you better. And I think that's so powerful. We talked a lot about conversation with kids. We talked about, laying aside the things that might be entangling you, the weights on your life, like you laid aside alcohol, things that might be stealing from you of being a great dad or being a great human being or man and winning in life. And so what would you say, like if you had to give us the dad listener right now that says, Bryan, you gave me a lot of great things now. Where do I start, man? Like when I stop this podcast, I go back to the busyness of life. I go back to the problems, the worries, the things, busyness, distractions. Where do I start? This seems like a lot. What would you say to that, Dad?
Yeah. Well, first of all, I know this isn't really a faith-based podcast, but I'm going to tell you something.
It is. Just so you know, we have majority of our listeners, they're faith-based. They know what I stand for. They know what I believe in. They know about the power of prayer. I quote verses on here all the time. So feel free, speak from your heart, brother.
Okay, good. Because the first thing I'm going to tell you to do is start opening up with prayer. You need help in something, you can't do it on your own. Listen, lean on your Heavenly Father and say, listen, man, I'm struggling in this area. And I know that you provided a lot of blessings in my life, Lord, but I'm really struggling in this area. And I'm hoping maybe you can provide me some guidance, some kind of open my mind up. That's why I start my day with like, Lord, give me strength, give me courage, give me wisdom to help me be the next version of myself today. So open yourself up to prayer and don't be afraid to. And pray often. Talk to the Lord. Say, hey, I'm still struggling here. Maybe you know what, when you start praying, you're praying for a few days or a few weeks and you're just not hearing him, saying, Lord, I don't hear you, man. I need you right now. Trust me, he's working behind the scenes and he's making things happen. So I would first start with prayer. And then second, going back to what I was saying earlier, you got to learn to love yourself, man. If it means reading books, if it means journaling, doing those kind of things are all going to help you be a better person. It's got to start with that. So prayer and love yourself are the two things that I would tell dads. That's where you need to start right there. Those two things right there. Once you start those and you're committed to those, loving yourself, learn who you are, look yourself in the mirror every day and say, hey, I know who you are today. I know who you want to be today, and let's go make it happen. And then pray about it. Pray about it because it will change your life. Start with those two things. And then from there, it just catapults into other areas of your life that you can magnify them. So.
I love it. I think that's number one, guys. And that's how I live my life. And if anybody's listening, they're part of the Win All Day, what we do, we talk about that a lot. Having a morning routine, having an evening routine, prayer is a part of that, right? Planning your day is a part of that. Having a strategy is a part of that. And while Bryan was talking, there's one thing that came to me, and we could talk all day, Bryan, man. I love you. Guys, if you have not listened to his podcast yet, you need to go listen to his podcast. Go listen to the episode that I did with him. I don't know what episode it is, but it was back in the day, probably a year ago, maybe. I remember it being a fire episode. It was a great conversation. And we'll talk more about how they can find you. But one of the things that, I thought about strategy when you were saying prayer is one of the things that I did and I continue to do every single day is right after I pray, I put myself in a peak state. And so this simple focus exercise, okay, and Bryan mentioned something earlier. You get done with a busy day at work, right? And then a lot of times as dads, we bring all that stuff to the house. We don't know how to shut it off, okay? When I would pull into the garage, before I entered the house, I would ask myself these same three focus questions I asked myself in the morning before I went to a new environment. I'd say, what's one thing you're thankful for about your family? Thankful for about being a dad, thankful for about being a husband, thankful for about your kids, right? Attitude of gratitude can shift an environment. Mm-hmm. Then I would ask myself, I would remind myself, because I already knew the answer, what does a winning family look like to you? What is a vision? We're talking about vision, purpose, and why, right? Vision, clarity, and your purpose, your why. I would remind myself what you want a winning marriage and a winning environment as a family to look like when you walk through these doors. And number three, I would say, what's 3 descriptive words on how you're going to be intentional when you walk through those doors tonight with your family? And so many times just having that check, right, of hold on, I know I had all this stuff go on. My wife might have been texting me. I'm going to walk in. And even when I walk in, stuff might hit the fan. I don't know what the wife's going to say. I don't know how the kids are going to react. And things might not be, it might be chaos and pressure and noise. I can't allow the environment to change who I am as a dad, right? So I would say, okay, I'm thankful that I have an amazing wife that loves me. I'm thankful I have a healthy daughter that I can love on and nurture. I'm thankful that and then I would say, okay, what's a vision? Remind myself of the vision. What's a winning marriage or family life or dad life look like? Man, it looks like this. It looks like that. I remind myself of that. And then I'd say, okay, how are you going to show up tonight? It's 5 o'clock. It's 4 o'clock. You have 4 hours before the night's done. How are you going to show up? Well, I'm going to be loving. I'm going to be nurturing, and I'm going to be intentional with my words, right? Whatever. And then I remind myself, and that's how I would choose, take a deep breath, and that's how I would choose to show up in the house today, right after my prayer time, guys. So again, I'm giving you that. I just felt like to give you that, right? Don't keep going into the environment with no game plan. Don't keep going into the environment with no strategy. Prayer works, but also faith without works is dead. As you pray, God's going to give you divine intervention and amazing ideas. Implement these small, simple things like loving yourself, breaking these addictions or cycles that might be holding you back, systems of communicating and taking your kids out and having that quality time. Implement the stuff that we gave you, and don't think you have to be perfect. Sometimes it's just about just being present and moving the ball. Law of compounding interest, right, Bryan? If I just stack wins, all of a sudden, small conversations over time will add up to great relationship. Don't think you have to change the whole game at once as a dad, but you got to start, right? And some of you are on this call and you're like, hey, I'm good, but I want to be great. But I haven't incorporated the conversations, or I haven't incorporated the advisory board, or I haven't incorporated loving myself. Start with small hinges swing big doors, and you'll watch the entire trajectory of your household and your parenting change. Bryan, what would you say? Any final thoughts? I know we could talk all day, man. I want to respect your time. Any final thoughts before I tell everybody where they could find you? Any final thoughts to the dads listening from your heart that you want to share that we missed today?
Yeah, I'll just kind of add to what you were saying there. I know we talked a lot about the different areas that we talked about, a lot about mental shift, making that mental shift to make these changes. But really the key is not so much making that mental shift. It starts with that, but it also you have to have action behind it. You can say all these things. Listen, JC, you can pull in the garage and say those things, but if you're not going into the house and living those things out as you said them, and you're not taking action on them, then they're nothing. They mean nothing. They're just words, right? They're empty words. So whatever it is that you're trying to change in your life, change it. Think about it, write it down, journal it, whatever you have to do, but then take action on it. And like you said, it multiplies the little steps that you take. I focus every single day on being the next version of myself today than I was yesterday. If I can get just a little bit better, even if it's just a 10% increase in what I was yesterday, imagine what it looks like at the end of the year, how much better I am. So you have to take action on it. So dads, if you're listening to this, moms, even if you're not a dad or a mom and you're listening to this, listen, write it down, think about it, write it down, and take action on it. That's huge.
I love it, man. Hey guys, you're listening to the Win All Day podcast. This is Bryan Ward, the creator and founder of the DADUP movement and the DADUP podcast. Bryan, tell everybody where they can find you, where they can listen to mine in your episode, where they can listen to your show, anything else you have going on. Please let our listeners and our viewers know, brother.
Yeah, first of all, let me just say thank you. Thank you for not only allowing me to share my story on your show, but also for our friendship. Our friendship means the world to me. I look up to you as a mentor of mine, and I appreciate everything that you're doing. So you keep doing the things that you're doing because you're killing it, brother. I really am proud of you, proud of who you are, and appreciate you in the show. Where people can find me, I'm all over social media. They can find me at DADUP Podcast on Instagram. That's mainly the main one that I use, but I'm on all of them: Facebook, Twitter, LinkedIn, TikTok. I'm on all those places. And then also my website's DADUP Tribe. They can go on my website and they can find me there too. But listen, I answer everybody on my Instagram. So if you send me a DM, let me know. I'll reply. And then obviously my podcast is on YouTube, and then also you can find it anywhere you get your podcasts: Apple, Spotify, all those places. So at DADUP Podcast. So yeah.
I love it. Come on, Bryan Ward. We are so grateful for the time that you sowed today into the Win All Day family. Guys, you know what Win All Day in what we do, we have our winning five, and a big part of that is family. And my goal of bringing Bryan on today is I want to see you as a dad absolutely maximize your God-given talents and abilities. And this is your guy. This is the guy that's doing it and continues to do it. I think the greatest thing you said, Bryan, is I'm not perfect. I make mistakes, but you know what? We keep trying. We keep moving the ball. And I think it's one of the greatest responsibilities and callings and gifts that we have in this entire world is to be a dad and raise kids. So we could talk all day long, man. I'm grateful for you. I honor you for being on the show. Once again, this is Bryan Ward with DADUP and the DADUP podcast. Make sure go listen to him. Hit him up on Instagram. Tell him thank you for being on the show. And Bryan, I always like to do something as we end the show. This is Win All Day. And so I would love for you to say, I am Bryan Ward, right? I am a winner. I will win and win all day. So I am Bryan Ward. I am a winner. I will win and win all day. Can we do that?
I am Bryan Ward. I am a winner, and I will win all day.
Let's go. Guys, who loves you? We love you. Thank you for joining this episode of the Win All Day podcast show. And until next time, I want to remind you that you are a winner and you will win and win all day. Guys, we'll get at you next time.